Hello, I'm Deborah Weiner from WBAL TV. Thank you for joining us tonight. I want to welcome the Republican candidates for governor to Maryland Public Television. Mr. David Craig, Mr. Ron George, Mr. Larry Hogan, and Mr. Charles Lawler. We want to thank the League of Women Voters of Maryland for lining up undecided voters in our studio audience. We're going to get right to the debate. First, we want to let everybody know that we will have 90 seconds for answers and 60 seconds for any rebuttals. We'll try to get about half of the questions tonight from our audience and try to leave 60 seconds for each candidate to make a closing statement at the end of the debate. First, the first question. The four of you have chosen very different paths in life: a Marine, an actor turned jeweler, a businessman, a lifelong public servant. And yet your positions are very similar. How do you differentiate yourselves from each other and not just from your Democratic opponents? Mr. Craig?
I started my career as a teacher and assistant principal. That is my career. Back in 1971, I knew I wanted to be a teacher when I was in 6th grade, when they would send me down to actually substitute for 2nd and 3rd grade teachers. So I always enjoyed being a teacher. And then on the volunteer side is when I did public service. And that's because I went to Harvard Grace High School, and if you've ever been there, the motto of that school is enter to learn, leave to serve. And I'm a member of the Methodist Church, and our motto was enter to worship, leave to serve. Turned out it was the same man that wrote that. He was the assistant principal at the high school, and he was also the choral director at our church. So it's always been about public service, not a career as a politician. But that has given me the experience, having served 32 years in public service as a city councilman, as a mayor, as a county executive, but also as a delegate and a state senator. So we know what it's like on that side. Another thing that does prepare you, strangely enough, is being a coach. I coached soccer for 25 seasons, and that gets you ready too, because then you know how to put a team together, you know how to come up with a game plan, you know how to put the two together to actually win the game and do what it is that you've been asked to do. But for me, it's always been about public service. And I do tell people I had 3 reasons why I ran for office. That was Randy, Courtney, and PJ, our son and our 2 daughters. I wanted this to be a good place for them to grow up, live, and work. And we won because they're all here.
Mr. George, I ask you, how do you differentiate yourself from the other candidates?
Thank you, Deborah. First of all, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for this forum. It's wonderful. I want to thank you also for the Stop the Gerrymander Award I received 2 days ago from your group, because there are nonpartisan issues. I want everyone to know, when they say they're a nonpartisan group, they really are, and they've helped with many good government issues in the legislature. You mentioned that I was once an actor, but when I was in New York City, I saw runaways and homeless people out on the streets. I saw young women that were forced into drugs and then prostitution. And I got involved, and I volunteered, and I helped at a center, an emergency shelter for them. And I help people, and I've always done that. I've always been involved with a lot of volunteer work. I even went and got a master's degree in clinical psychology to help children with learning disorders and to help in counseling services. So I have that experience. I also have the experience of being a small business owner. My dad could not afford to send me to college. I went to a trade school, and I learned a trade, doing jewelry repair and design. I went up to Syracuse because my uncle told me up there were no jewelers in town. They were sending all their work to New York. So I began a business there, and I paid my way through college at Syracuse University. So nothing's been handed to me. I also was moonlighting and acting and waiting on tables and all of that. I met my wife, a ballerina in New York, when I was doing the acting and the counseling work. And we quickly came down to Annapolis. I started my business, Ron George Jewelry Repair and Design. And then I started Ron George Jewelers in 1991. We have 2 locations of manufacturing. I get it. I'm a Main Street business person. I've been 8 years in the legislature. I've been successful there, and I'll talk about that a little later. But I have a well-rounded amount of experience. That is not just a career politician, it's not just business, but I think it's all-encompassing. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you, Mr. Hogan.
Well, first of all, I want to thank the League of Women Voters very much for giving us this opportunity. Thank WBAL and MPT for hosting us, and thank all of you here in the audience for coming out today. Really appreciate it, the opportunity to be here and to talk with you, and looking forward to the discussion. I'm not a professional politician. I've spent most of my life in the private sector. For the past 25 years, I've built a successful business that has brought hundreds of companies and thousands of jobs into the state of Maryland. I really didn't decide to run for governor out of any desire to be something. I really felt an obligation that I needed to do something. I felt like our state was way off track and headed in the wrong direction, and that our very economic future was at stake. My running mate, Secretary Boyd Rutherford, and I, we're the only ticket in either party where both candidates have real experience in actually running the executive branch of state government as cabinet secretaries, But even more importantly, we both have diverse private sector experience, which is something I think is lacking in Annapolis. We've really got three priorities. We're all about jobs, middle-class families, and restoring our economy. And we've got a plan. The first thing we're going to do is roll back spending, and we've identified $1.75 billion worth of very specific cuts. And then we're going to try to roll back as many of these 40 tax increases as we can, because it's just crushing middle-class families. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you.
Thank you. And Mr. Lawler.
What distinguishes me from my counterparts, both on the Republican and Democrat side, let me first thank the League of Women Voters for this opportunity, as well as Maryland Public Television. I join the sentiments of my peers. We are honored that you all have us here. Not just 17 years of Marine Corps experience, but 16 years in business experience. Been an executive with a Fortune 500 company right here in Maryland, where I managed and employed over 212 partners and ran a P&L of $23 million. I'm also a 2-year chairman of the Maryland's Taxpayers Association. I've been married to my wife, Rosha, for 20 years, 21 this October, and we have 4 daughters. I've raised 4 daughters in a house with 5 women. That, for some of you all know, that's incredible and feeding of itself. And then the most handsome grandson you'd ever see in your life. I've got pictures, I'm serious, really beautiful boy who I love coming home to. But leadership matters. Experience matters, especially in leadership. And having led Marines in the combat, I've been deployed 3 different times, having been a business leader in this state, and having the know-how and the resource to take it seriously, that in a state like Maryland, you have to go out and see the voters, whether they're Republicans or Democrats. I've spent the past 18 months in Prince George's County, Montgomery County, Baltimore City, with a very conservative message, but I found that that message resonates across the board. So when it comes to what separates me from my peers, it's leadership experience, but also the solutions that are nonpartisan. I'm interested in being the best governor of Maryland I can be, not the best Republican and not the best Democrat. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. We want to go to our audience because while they may be undecided, they're very thoughtful. So we want to go ahead and start with you, and go ahead and tell me your name and your question.
My name is Chris Yoder. I'm from Baltimore City. And my question is simply, do you accept the fact that our planet is getting hotter and that human activity is a major cause of that increase? And how will you address this issue when you're in the governor's mansion?
All right. We're going to start with Mr. Lawler.
My biggest problem with a lot of things that have been said when it comes to the environment is, depending on who's doing the research, a lot of times the evidence is turned to one direction or another. And then the hypocrisy that's followed by those that put forth these issues of whether it's global warming, these issues of the environment getting hotter, and yet they're driving large SUVs themselves. Sometimes you get lost in the sauce of the hypocrisy. But with the recent hurricanes that we've seen in the past 3 to 5 years, the temperature swifts and changes. I mean, I grew up in Westchester, Pennsylvania, 6 other states, as a matter of fact, and I've seen a lot of the climate change. We don't have the winter, spring, summer, fall, succession that we used to. There's some things going on. To what extent does government get involved with that? To what extent is that humans injecting what we do every day, whether it's building cars, driving cars, whether we're farming, whatever the case may be? I am not sure, to be honest with you. I'm not totally sold on the idea that humans are the problem. I happen to be a Christian, which for that point, I believe that God had a plan when he put man in this earth, man and women in this earth, as well as animals in this earth. So I believe there's a greater plan for us all. But whether I'm tying all of my views environmentally to an idea that global warming is an issue that we can control or we can stop, I'm not sure. I'm interested in doing my own research. But I'd like for that research to be nonpartisan so we can address it. And then when I stand firm on something, I want to make sure I'm staying firm on it. I'm actually changing my lifestyle as well, and not just preaching to one and then living a life of hypocrisy.
Mr. Hogan.
Well, there's no question that the climate of the earth is changing. I mean, that's a scientific fact. And I also believe that humans have something to do with it. The question is how much, and what we can actually do to solve the problem. It's a problem that's of concern to a lot of folks, but let me tell you, the guys on the other side of the aisle in the Democratic Party, for example, the Lieutenant Governor a couple of weeks ago said his #1 priority as governor was going to be stopping climate change. And quite frankly, I don't know that the governor of our little tiny state of Maryland is going to stop the climate of the earth from changing all by himself. My priorities would be a little bit different. My priorities are middle-class families, people that don't have jobs, and these struggling small businesses. And my focus is going to be on, getting the government off our backs and out of our pockets so we can grow the economy and put people back to work and turn this thing around.
Mr. George.
Thank you, Deborah. You know, part of what he just said about the economy is important to me, because one of the reasons that I voted against a few of the environmental bills is that they've punished somebody and they're not going to solve the problem. So just about every environmental bill that's come through the legislature that gets the most attention punishes businesses and waterfront owners and local people and watermen and farmers. There are other answers that we can do, because if all we're going to do is shrink the private sector tax base, which, by the way, there are still 73,000 people that are unemployed, 73,000 more that are unemployed than when this recession began. Maryland has not recovered. We're having more people go across the border to work. So it gives you an idea that the economy isn't as great as people think. We have to grow the tax base. It's shrinking in Baltimore. It's shrinking everywhere. So we cannot get to those solutions. We cannot keep throwing more and more money at it unless we have true solutions. I do have solutions. I have some free market ideas. I'm the one that proposed the wind turbines at Greenberry Point on the north mouth of the Severn. The Navy's going ahead with the project. It won't be government run. They lease it out to a private company. There's already a grid in place. I'm out of time, but there's many more solutions that we should do that work. This offshore wind one is not going to. Thank you.
And Mr. Craig.
When I went to Towson State College, not Towson University, tells you how long ago, I actually took weather and climatology as a class, and one of the current weathermen, who I won't mention since it's a different channel, was in that class. When people say climate change, they get it wrong. Climate does mean change. Weather, climate, it changes. It has always changed. You go back 28,000 years ago, there would have been no North Sea. If you go back 28,000 years ago, we would have had glaciers. We wouldn't have had the Steelers up in Pittsburgh. We would have had glaciers up there. So it is not just about what humans do. Now, the fact that there are 7 billion humans on the earth does make a change in some ways, but it is not the only thing. So what should government do? Government should institute, what I would do as governor is do the same thing as a teacher, institute pilot programs, prove that they work, prove that they actually take care of the problem you've come up with, and then if it doesn't, readjust it so that it actually does take care of that environmental problem.
Thank you. Any rebuttals?
No, I think we're all set. I think you could add them all together and you got a pretty good answer.
The next question. Marijuana laws have received a lot of attention this year. When it comes to medical marijuana, doctors can now recommend it to patients who are critically ill. If you had a family member who was critically ill, would you support the use of medical marijuana in your home to ease their pain? Mr. Craig?
You could actually take out whether it was a family member or not. No, I do not support that. It is not a good idea. When the Volstead Act was passed, there were people able to get permission to get alcohol because it was a health care issue. That was made up. It was just something that the industry wanted. That is the way it is. If there's a chemical in marijuana that can be used to help someone get through pain, it can be taken out and given as a medicine. It doesn't have to be done that way. But encouraging this is only going to expand it to try to make marijuana itself either delegalized or decriminalized or legalized. And that is going to make our society much worse. I do not want my grandchildren to go to a doctor or a dentist or a teacher and know that they were smoking marijuana during the day. If you look at Colorado, what's going on out there, their death rate on fatalities on highways is increasing because of marijuana use, because it distracts your attention. So it's not just the medical marijuana issue. It extends beyond that. If you have a good physician would know how to help you get through that pain issue without saying it has to be marijuana.
Mr. George.
Thank you so much. I have that degree in clinical psychology. I understand what cannabis does to the brain, and especially the developing brain. The more we legalize marijuana, the more the younger people are using it. That's where I have a problem, mainly. Now, did I vote for the medical marijuana bill that we passed in 2013, and we corrected a little bit this year? Yes, I did. I happen to know that some young people that have seizures, if you take out the drug component, the THC components, it helps them. It helps them with their seizures. It's all right. It doesn't have the drug part in it. I do know that a woman was dying of cancer and she wanted to be there for her family. And it's restricted. It was in the hospital use. It was in a way that no one else can be growing it. There's no one growing it at home or grow your own or any of those type of things. But in a restricted medicinal use like that, I'm okay with that. But I wouldn't expand it beyond that. Thank you.
Mr. Hogan.
Well, it's obviously an issue that everyone's focused on here in the state because we just had this big debate in Annapolis during the last session about legalization or about decriminalization, and they're really different issues. I've talked with people who have really been suffering, cancer patients, and people really that are going through terrible pain, and they say that this is one of the things that really helps them. I was a cabinet secretary in the Ehrlich administration when we actually passed the first medical marijuana bill. It wasn't strong enough. It didn't allow enough people to get the use of it. But I'm very much opposed to, at this point, considering the expansion of any legalization here in the state. You know, the governor of Colorado has warned other governors, saying that there were a lot of unforeseen consequences that they didn't envision when they passed this bill. 2 states have already tried to do legalization. I think we ought to be very cautious and see what happens in those states. But for medical uses, for people that are really in need, as your question was, a family member or anyone's family member that's going through that kind of suffering, they should, if that's what their doctor believes is what's necessary to help them, I think it's something we have to be able to allow them to do.
Thank you. And Mr. Lawler.
You know, this does not have to be a divisive issue. It really doesn't. We have to be very careful with the slippery slope where these types of conversations go. I refuse to let this be a Republican versus Democrat issue because it's not. It really is about responsibility, and I'm tired of these laws that are pushed forward to hurt Maryland first. Whether it's the medicinal use of marijuana or whether it's the legalization of marijuana, it's something that I stand against. And I'm very firm with that, only because we've been treating and helping patients with pain for years. And we've been doing it without using marijuana. Marijuana is not the only thing for someone or a family member that's hurting that they can turn to use to ease the pain. There's other things that can be used that are currently being used today. Why such a debate and such a heated contention about marijuana use? I think it springs down a road for other purposes. And a lot of times I think they're partisan. I heard one of my peers on the other side of the aisle mention it's time for the grown-ups in the room to talk about legalizing marijuana and bringing more money into the state coffers as a result, instead of thinking about better ways to balance our budgets and be more responsible with the money they currently have. They're spending over $40 billion of your tax money. So this doesn't have to be divisive. Please understand, there's so many ways to treat patients. And doctors, I've talked to doctors, I've even talked to sheriffs about this marijuana issue. And it's out of control with our kids, along with heroin addictions. We have to do the best job we can to fight it. And isn't it ironic that we live in a state that's trying to stop people from smoking cigarettes, but now we're talking about legalizing marijuana?
Our next question comes from our audience here, and it has to do with education.
I wondered, do you have any proposals for equitably and adequately funding school construction given different local tax bases and differing needs, such as aging schools in Baltimore City and overcrowding or mold abatement in suburban schools?
Mr. Lawler.
First and foremost, it starts with ensuring that the educational dollars that are set aside are being used appropriately and responsibly. I cannot underscore enough with you all, and again, this is not a Republican or a Democrat issue, how much wasteful spending goes on in Annapolis. How many funds are raided every time they're in session, taking one pot of money here and putting it elsewhere. This gambling bill is a really good example. Where was the money supposed to go? Supposed to go to education. I'm sure it wouldn't surprise you that that money went to 3 other funds to include education. A lot of times that money that's supposed to go there for the buildup of those schools, so we can have better schools and education, so we can have better classrooms, the money doesn't get to its proper intended purpose. What will our policy do? We would like to see parents and their students have school choice. So if a parent wants to send their child to a private school, a charter school, or a regular school, their tax dollars will follow their decision. I believe that our education system is not as homogenous as it was in the 1900s. Our kids learn differently. So different academic schools and systems are going to come out of the woodworks, maintain proper standards, and compete for your children to go to their schools, which will ease overcrowding in so many schools. It'll help the education environment all the way around. So first and foremost, we got to make sure the money's being spent properly. Secondly, by allowing for school choice and tax dollars to follow, it's going to ease up some of the pressures off those schools so we can start using the money to make sure that we're building better schools where these students are, because having 35 to 37 students in one classroom for one teacher in Baltimore City is unacceptable.
Thank you. Mr. Hogan.
Well, since 2002, here in Maryland, we have doubled spending on education. You know, the Thornton formula required it, and we did it during the Ehrlich administration, and this administration has continued it. We're spending a lot of money on education. The great news is, in some places, we have fantastic schools. In Howard County, for example, or if you're lucky enough to live in Montgomery County, they have some of the best schools in the nation. But the difference between, and the gap between underperforming schools, say in Baltimore City or in some other areas, and those other schools is dramatic. And it's not just a money problem, because we're actually spending more money in Baltimore City than we are in other places, and we're not getting the same results. During the Ehrlich administration, we passed the first charter schools legislation, which I think is one of the things that we need to offer people an opportunity, because we shouldn't punish kids because of where they live. If you live in a great neighborhood, you get to go to a great school. If you live in a tough neighborhood, you're stuck, and you don't get the opportunity to get the education the other kids are. Charter schools have done wonderful things across the country, in New York City, in Chicago, in Detroit. We passed legislation that was watered down by the Democrats in the legislature, and a report just came out and said we're 50th in the nation for charter schools. So it's one of the things. But we are spending a lot of money. It's not the only answer. We've got to get communities involved and parents involved. We need to push the money down to the local level, put it into the classrooms with teachers, parents, and students making decisions instead of politicians and labor unions.
Mr. George.
Yes. Just very briefly, then I'll get to the construction, because that was the question, right? But I do support the charter schools. I led a fight when they wanted to change the funding formula that would have killed them on the State House floor in 2008. And we killed that on the floor. And I served on the National Board for Homeschoolers, so I get it with school choice. It's nice to have all those choices out there. But I will say this on school construction. I do support the BOST program, where businesses get a tax credit in order to donate towards school construction. I see no problem with that. It saves the state money. People think we're going to lose money by giving that credit. We make it up more on the other end when they're donating to the schools. That and the public-private partnerships are very, very important. I had a proposal back in 2007 and 2008 to allow for public-private partnerships where people could donate that money and be able to get the credit and be able to build, and it would help. I have no problem if Under Armour's name was on the side of a gymnasium. We're building some Taj Mahals in this state while other schools are suffering. A little less on those, a little more to those schools that are suffering as part of it too. Delegate Kathy Vitale, my seatmate on the House floor, had a bill this year that I co-sponsored that was a trial basis for the public-private partnership. I looked at it. I have an economics finance background. I can tell you it is solid, and I think you all should get behind it this next year, because doing that test pilot program will prove it can work. Thank you.
And Mr. Craig.
All right, I'm just going to concentrate on your question. Hopefully someone else asks an educational question later. I'm the one with experience that actually did it. I'm the county executive. When I became the county executive in 2005, I sat with the superintendent and our board and said, we need to come up with a 10-year plan. We spent $500 million to go school construction, built 6 new schools, have 2 more that will be under construction soon, to make sure that we had good new schools, and that can be done. For Baltimore City, you have about 200 schools in Baltimore City, but you only have attendance that would be for about 100. But you still want to have community schools. Community schools are very important. It's not just saying every school has to be a certain size. Sometimes it may be a very small school. We have that in Harper County. I go to Norrisville Elementary, and there are only 19 children per grade level. But we still want a school in that area, because you don't want those children to get on a bus for 45 minutes to get somewhere else. So we actually have the experience to have done it. And that $500 million, our debt is still below the average person's credit card debt. So we know how to do it. We've actually done it. That's what I would encourage you to think about when you look for who you want to vote for governor, because I have been around to all the different counties and I know which schools they have, because we do want the new technology. We want them to be safe. We want security in these schools. So you need the ICT things, but you also need to make sure that nobody can break into a school at any given time. I was an assistant principal. I had to deal with that situation. So worked there for 34 years. We'll get it done.
Thank you. With the Columbia Mall shooting this past winter and the mass shooting in San Diego, gun laws are being debated in families all across Maryland. Do you support efforts to make personal defense a justification for a concealed carry permit? Mr. Craig.
Yes, we'll start with the fact that NRA just gave me an A rating on that. There was just a shooting not long ago just in California, and some people came out and said we need to have more gun control, but they realized that 3 of the people that died had been stabbed. They never talked about knife control. We do need to have the right, our Second Amendment rights, to defend ourselves. We need to have the right to concealed carry and shall issue. That is what people should have the ability to do, because the states that have those have lower murder rates than the states that don't have that. And I can tell you, as the Harper County executive, we are the safest county in the state of Maryland in which to live. We have a lower murder rate and a lower criminal rate than any other county, and it's lower than it was up until 1983. We have no extra gun control rules and regulations there. What is it that makes it safe? We have a very good sheriff, a very good sheriff's office, very good deputies who know how to get out there and protect you. And we also have a good state's attorney who knows how to go through prosecution. We have a good correctional facility to help people when they're in there. So it is not just about gun control. There are enough laws out there already to make sure that you're protected if you choose not to own a gun. But we still need to defend those rights that our founders came up with back in the 1700s.
Mr. George.
One of the statistics that came out this morning is that the black-on-black crime is through the roof in murders, but it's mainly in 3 cities, and they include Washington, D.C. Chicago's another, there's one more. And those cities have all had strong gun laws, and they've outlawed guns, and the murder rate's gone up. It's way up, and they lead the nation. In fact, those 3 have more than the rest of the country combined. And they're the 3 that have those total gun controls. I think every woman needs an ability to protect herself when she feels it's urgently needed. But I do believe in people getting courses for gun safety and things of that sort. I do believe in conceal and carry. I'm a jewelry store owner. I and my sons are a target. I get it firsthand. There was a time I got strange phone calls in the middle of the night about myself, my family, and my business. Luckily, I already had a gun in a gun safe, but I got to tell you, if I had to go through it and it was going to take 3 weeks to get one, that's not the way to go. It's not. The crime rates have dropped in every state that has allowed you to be able to get the gun to protect yourself. When people feel that you don't have a gun, they're more likely to feel more powerful. The criminals do. So I'm just really for people to be able to protect themselves, and I think that's very important. I'm looking at the stats, and the stats show that crime rate drops when you do.
Thank you. Mr. Hogan.
I think we need to do more to keep guns out of the hands of the mentally ill and more out of the hands of criminals. I think we need tougher mandatory sentences on crimes committed with guns. I believe we should have instant background checks. There's a federal system that does instant background checks for most states in the country. Here in Maryland, we're not participating in the system, and we should be. Instead, we take 150 days for the state police to be tied up when they should be out doing other police work, and they're doing this research on their own. We're one of the few states in the country that doesn't upload information to the federal system. We don't track mental illness. You know, that's really, obviously, I agree with the guys who said some of the toughest gun laws in the country are in places where we have the biggest amount of gun crime going on. So that's not really just the answer. We've got to look at this from every side. I support the Second Amendment. I think we ought to do more to keep the guns out of the hands of the mentally ill and people that are criminals. We shouldn't take away the rights of law-abiding citizens under the Second Amendment.
Thank you.
When the gentleman's done, I would like just a chance. I have 15 seconds left, and I would like a chance to.
Excellent. Mr. Lawler.
Yes, this is another issue that doesn't have to be a divisive when it really doesn't. We've had more confrontative conversations across political aisles about this issue over the past 2 to 3 years, and I care to admit, and you've been forefront probably on all of them, just watching them on your television station. September the 30th, when this Second Amendment, this attack against the Second Amendment was done, but the Senate bill was passed, I didn't see one criminal step up to turn in their AR-15, not one. There were no lines of those that actually had weapons that were illegal that actually just signed up to turn them in. The problem with a lot of these laws that are geared toward gun control is they hurt law-abiding citizens first. Just consider that. Because those that get these weapons illegally or on the black market or otherwise, they're doing so and they're doing them illegally. I'm a big fan of honoring the laws and keeping the laws we currently have on the books, supporting our local law enforcement, supporting our local sheriffs, ensuring that our state troopers are working side by side in a good working relationship with our local law enforcement. But I don't want this conversation to evolve and escalate to where we are putting a stranglehold or we're putting a harness on law-abiding citizens when it comes to their weapons. And when our founding fathers initially put forward our Constitution, the Second Amendment, it was to ensure that we had freedom so we could protect those freedoms, whether in our homes or in our nations. So I absolutely agree with the Second Amendment, and yes, I do. The answer to your question is absolutely I would.
And a reminder that we have 60 seconds for rebuttal. So, Mr. George, you have 60 seconds. Well, it's not so much against what other people say, but just the mental health piece, having that clinical psychology degree is very important to me. I had House Bill 969 in the 2013 legislative session that was a mental health piece.
The Maryland Psychological Association and school psychologists and others liked the bill very much. It allowed there to be a referral process. The mother in Connecticut felt she had no place to turn. Others would be able to call this number. If money was an issue, they had a referral process. There was a way to get people help. When people saw this downward spiral in attitude and test scores or job performance and the depressive disorders coming on, there was a place to turn. We don't have that now. As governor, I will get that passed. I also have a top rating from NRA, I guess, so I don't know if that matters. Thank you.
I just have one piece to add. After the bill was passed, and many of you know about this bill as Marylanders back in, well, it came into play in September the 30th. January the 1st of this year, in the first 14 days, there were 13 crimes committed with a weapon in Baltimore City alone, in the first 14 days of the year. So how did this law do anything to stop the current problem? We don't have to throw more laws at this issue. We just have to resolve that we're going to keep the ones that we currently have and trust in our law-abiding citizens. I want to make sure that point is made. It's very important.
Any other rebuttals? Okay. Our next question comes from our audience.
My name is Robert Blank. I live in Baltimore City, the Canton area. It's a two-part question. Why are businesses leaving the state, and how do you plan to attract new businesses?
Mr. Lawler.
Yeah, thank you. That's an easy one. That's an easy one. I think we're ranked 48th worst to do business in this state. I know the taxes are out of control here. I've had several conversations with business owners leaving. The tyrannical attitude that exists in Annapolis, as if you work for the government and that the government doesn't work for you, that exists. The excessive regulations and fees. We had a farmer on the Eastern Shore, a man named Alan Hudson, who was sued with his own tax dollars by the Law Center here at the University of Maryland for excessive phosphorus deposits and nitrogen deposits, quote unquote, to be found on his farm. They weren't even there. He won the lawsuit, but the farmer had to come up with $1 million to pay his legal fees. Where does a farmer get that kind of money to pay legal fees to have his own state sue him? Businesses are leaving us at the rapid rate and taking good jobs with them, thus shrinking the middle class in numbers faster than I've seen in recent memory. And it's because of this excessive tax, it's because of the environment, it's because of the regulations. What will we do? Our plan will eliminate the personal income tax in 5 years. That plan was endorsed by Dr. Arthur Laffer, who was Ronald Reagan's economic advisor. We will work with the legislature hard to ensure that we pass a real taxpayer's Bill of Rights that ties the growth of government directly with cost of living and CPI. So no longer will more money be taken out of your pocket than what you're making to sustain the current government that we have. And finally, our departments will start working with Marylanders and start treating you all as the customers that you are, instead of this tyrannical attitude where you actually think you deserve something from the government. I mean, the government actually deserves something from you. It should work the other way around.
Mr. Hogan.
Well, this is a great question. Thank you for asking it. It's one of the main reasons why I decided to run for governor. I am a small businessman. As I said earlier, I've brought hundreds of companies and thousands of jobs into Maryland. I also started 3 years ago the largest nonpartisan grassroots citizen organization in state history, Change Maryland. We now have 93,000 people involved. The issue is our state is being devastated. Most people aren't focused. I'm glad we finally got to an economic question and about what's happening to the businesses. We only have 3 Fortune 500 companies headquarters left here in Maryland. We've lost 6,500 small businesses, almost 100,000 jobs. Unemployment is up 76%. There's 3 basic reasons. CEO Magazine ranked us 41st out of 50 states in business friendliness. We have an onerous tax policy. We can't compete with the other states in the region. Businesses are leaving in droves to go to Virginia, to Delaware, to West Virginia, to other states. It's causing us, we've had the largest mass exodus of taxpayers of any state in the Mid-Atlantic region, and one of the worst in the country. This is what we've got to turn around. You can't keep taxing people out of the state. Businesses are leaving, individual citizens are leaving. We've got an onerous regulatory policy, we've got an over-aggressive tax policy that's taxing people out of the states, and we've got an anti-business attitude that has to change. It's happening all across our state. Baltimore City is experiencing it worse than any place else.
Mr. George.
Well, thank you. I'm also a business owner. I'm about the only retail business owner in the legislature that has a storefront. Small town, Main Street America, Main Street Annapolis. I've been a business owner there. I was asked to go testify on many issues concerning small business and what was hurting us. And I helped to turn a few things around. I got a cap on the boat excise tax. I won the repeal of the tech service tax. Now, I have to tell you that all these business organizations come in and testify. They get in the game like I did. And Change Maryland has never come in and testify in any of these bills. So to say it's a grassroots organization, to those on Ways and Means, it's an insult. We've been fighting it for years. Everything we said has come true about the people leaving. My sons and I had to have the conversation. I'm still young enough to help them get established in another state. My family goes back to the late 1600s in this state. I don't leave, but it was up to them, and they wanted me to stay and fight, which is they knew that's what I wanted to do. We lower that personal income tax, at least 10%. I'm going to do an emergency piece of legislation, unlike the other proposals here, so that in April, right after I get in, you will get a 10% reduction on your 2014 tax returns. That helps small businesses. It injects some money right into your pocket. Lower that corporate rate. I had a bill to lower it by a quarter point. Lets businesses here know that help is coming and it stops the bleeding. I'm almost out of time, so I'll just finish by saying that I've been successful as a businessman. My businesses never went bankrupt or anything like that. I've never gotten in trouble with them. I've lived week to week at times, but I made sure we stayed within our means. My employees are like family. I see these other ones leaving, and it hurts. They're all friends. They're all people I know.
Mr. Craig.
I'd like to, since he took a little shot at Change Maryland, I just want to respond to that.
Absolutely.
Change Maryland has been the leading voice of opposition to the failed economic policies of the O'Malley Brown administration here in the state and nationally. And we're the ones that did all of these studies. We are the ones that totaled up the number of businesses that left the state. We're the ones that totaled up the impact of the 40 consecutive tax hikes that have taken $9.5 billion out of the pockets of struggling Maryland families and small businesses. We did the taxpayer exodus study that proved that 31,000 taxpayers had fled our state and took with them $1.7 billion a year. So while the delegate has done a great job down in the legislature trying to fight some of these things in committee, we've been out here organizing a grassroots army to try to bring about change and to change the dialogue in this state.
Just very briefly. If you ever saw an ad on Facebook that says, repeal the gas tax, change Maryland, hit like, and you hit like, he considers you one of those 90,000 followers. Apparently, I'm a follower of Larry Hogan. I'm a member of his organization, he considers. Those stats that he talks about, we uncovered. They come from the federal level, all those taxes, all those fees, and all those things that we talk about. They come from DBED. You get them, they're online. You can find them, you organize them. All the ones he says he uncovered and did the studies for, they've been out there. We've used them on Ways and Means. We've used them on floor fights. There's nothing new about it. I think Change Maryland was all about Larry Hogan. Thank you.
Mr. Craig.
Well, I'm David Craig. I'm the Harford County Executive. My plan is to take the success we've had in Harford County and take it to the state level, to Annapolis. What do I mean by that? The economy tanked in 2008. We actually have 8,000 more jobs in Harford County than we did when it went bad. I didn't create them. Businesses created them. How did we do that? We lowered property taxes. We created a very good Department of Economic Development with people who reach out. Because the key to your question also is, instead of worrying about bringing new jobs in, let's make sure we keep the ones that exist here first. I don't want to see McCormick leave. McCormick started here 125 years ago. You know, if the governor had tried to keep Sparrows Point here or Western Electric, all those jobs that maybe everyone here probably knew someone that worked at those companies, keep the ones here first. Don't go to Brazil or India to try to bring in new ones. Keep the ones here first, then attract the other ones. Harford County, we have over 100 manufacturers in Harford County now. We have over 150 or 130 defense contractors. Again, I did not create them. And when we went to AAA bond rating this year, the only county in the state to go to AAA bond rating, with all three bond rating agencies said, you do a really good job at spending money. The key was, they said, you have such a diverse economy. We don't want to be like Detroit. Detroit was all about automobiles. And when automobiles started falling apart and not being, good manufacturing, it killed that city. You have to have a good, diverse economy so that if one of them is having a problem, then you can still have other people have jobs. So that is the key thing. Have someone that has success having done it, and we'll take it to Annapolis.
Thank you. We have another question along these lines of dollars and cents. Go ahead and share your question.
I'm Eileen Coffey, and I'm a resident of Harford County. Most of you have proposed eliminating personal taxes and cutting corporate taxes. How will you replace these funds, or at least some part of them, or which programs will you eliminate?
As county executive, we did lower property taxes, so we have the experience. The key is not that you need more money, and I would phase out the income tax over a 5-year plan. After the first year, we would examine how it worked to make sure that we were bringing in less money. What it will do is it will grow your economy, so it makes the pie bigger, ultimately. That is what happened in those 9 states. They're not just blue or red states, Texas, Tennessee, Delaware, Washington State. They don't have the income tax. There are 9 of them. They are the most successful economic states in our country, but they only represent 20% of the people, but over 70% of the new jobs that have been created. That's where people are going. They're basing it on that. So you won't need more money. The key for we will actually spend $5 billion less. And what we'll do is we'll start with the departments and say, lower your budget by 3%. Now, can each of you live off 3 cents less than $1? Most likely you can. The government can. They've raised the price of government by 35% in the last 8 years. And I'm sure none of you got a 35% pay increase. Another thing is if we get rid of the income tax, anybody who has a pension, a lot of those people are making that decision. I'm moving to Pennsylvania, I'm moving somewhere, especially if you're a veteran. Why should they have to pay a tax on their pension? They're just leaving to go somewhere else. We want them to stay here in the state. That builds your economy. That provides the extra money that you need.
Mr. George.
Ms. Coffey, thank you for the question. It's a good question. I've already uncovered waste within the government. I did it from the federal government's audits of our state, and I'll give you an example. 4 straight audits, they found at least $370 million that was wasted to child health care disbursements to Baltimore, not getting to the people it was supposed to, no accountability where it goes. If I gave $200 million more to those kids, I could still save $100 million. It's more getting to them. I'm not cutting the program itself. It's the department where the waste is. I can go through all the departments and give you different examples of this. Prince George's County, 4 straight audits over 8 years. $400 million of their $1.8 billion education budget was wasted. Same thing. They couldn't find where it was going. 4 straight times. I had an amendment on the House floor saying withhold some money till they straighten it out, and they haven't. I will get more money to the schools and still have some money. So I'll be able to do that 10% cut right away. That's how I can do it, because I've already uncovered that through the federal and independent audits. But then I'm going further. I'm asking for independent audits of all departments and agencies. Department of Legislative Services is willing to help with that. They're excited about it because they've seen the waste and nobody's ever doing anything about it. I've been on the front line on a budget committee for these past 8 years. I know where the money is. I know what's happening. We need a bigger voice. You put me in the governor's seat and you'll have it. Thank you.
Mr. Hogan.
When we were running the state government, before this current administration, when we left and turned over the keys to the group that's now running Annapolis, we had a $1 billion cash surplus in the bank. The state was in the best fiscal shape it's been in decades. Since that time, this administration has increased spending by $10 billion. That's a 36% increase. The National Governors Association, which is a nonpartisan group, said we increased spending at a rate higher than 46 other states, that only 3 states in the country increased spending the way we did. So spending is the #1 problem. We don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem. I agree with some of the comments the other fellows made. Our plan, the Hogan-Rutherford plan, is to first get spending under control. And we've identified $1.75 billion worth of waste, fraud, and inefficiency and duplication of effort throughout every single agency in state government. That's where we'll start. I also agree with Ron. We're calling for independent outside audits of every single state agency. That's part of our plan. We have a requirement for a balanced budget here in Maryland. So you can't just say we're going to eliminate all the taxes and have no plan for replacing, where are you going to cut? We have a plan on how to cut spending, and then we're going to get as many of these taxes rolled back to the 2007 levels as we can, before these 40 tax increases killed our economy. But you can't, the Democrats are proposing billions of new spending without saying how to pay for it. Some Republicans are saying let's eliminate all the taxes without saying what they're going to cut. We have a plan that's taking a look at both sides of the equation.
Mr. Lawler.
The assumption is that they're spending your money efficiently now. And that's a terrible assumption to make. The numbers are accurate, 36% increase. But let me give you just an even more of a better example of that. Where did we get $220 million to waste on a failed website for the Affordable Health Care Act implementation? I mean, my wife is pretty good with my dollar. She takes care of my money because she's much better at it than I am. She can tell you when we're missing 15 cents. How do we just miss $220 million so we can start all over again? And we have a legislature currently that knows we have a $210 million structural deficit. But even though we have that deficit, they still found a way to vote themselves a pay increase this year. It's interesting when people try to corner my comments and say, he wants to eliminate the personal income tax. How are you going to pay for it? How can we continue to sustain the pattern that we're on with businesses leaving us left and right, taking tax dollars with them? Over that same 8-year period, it took $5.5 billion of revenue with them. And whenever I hear someone talk about, well, you know, you're going to cut essential services, no, we don't have to. If we simply control the growth, instead of growing, for example, at 5.5%, 6% like we did this year at $2.3 billion, and only grow at 2%, we'll save ourselves $1.3 billion in the first year. So the assumption that they're spending it wisely, don't make that failed assumption. In fact, we are in such a financial crunch that your legislators voted themselves a pay increase on a part-time job this year. There's a problem with that. We do have the savings, and personally, I have a wonderful lieutenant governor that will serve you well, and Ken Timmerman, who is an investigative reporter, and we're doing external audits on every tax bill that was passed over the past 8 years. We'll find the savings.
Time, Mr. Lawler. The next question. Maryland is now the 18th state to repeal the death penalty. The O'Malley administration argues it is costly, it is not a deterrent, and is racially biased. Do you want to see a return of the death penalty? And if so, how do you guarantee its fairness? Mr. Lawler.
Well, that's a great question. And we guarantee its fairness, and yes, I do. And we guarantee its fairness by making sure it's implemented correctly, but it starts with leadership. And again, that whole idea that it's a racial divide is yet another way to separate Marylanders for vote purposes for full-time politicians. I'm so tired of the rhetoric. Imagine this. Forget the skin color. A clear American, a clear Marylander, is one of your workers at a local, at one of our jails or prison systems here in Maryland. And there's an out break or fight that goes on. We know that our Department of Corrections has a lot of corruption involved. What type of security does that clear-colored security guard have? When that inmate knows he already has life without parole, what's one more murder going to do to him? Listen, folks, there are things that are done in our societies, and it's unfortunate, and crimes that are so heinous that they absolutely do deserve the death penalty. When we find a case in point where something's been done maliciously or racially motivated, then we'll stop it. That's the beautiful thing about being your executive. But it needs to start at the leadership level and hold everyone from corrections all the way down accountable. And that includes anyone in my departments.
Mr. Hogan.
Well, I have always thought that there are some crimes that are so heinous that you needed to have the option of the death penalty. But now this is a matter of settled law here in Maryland. And I think it was a mistake. But I also know that as the governor of the state, I have to take an oath to uphold the laws of Maryland. And laws changed. This administration failed to implement the law for 8 years until they finally changed it. There's an issue that we have to look at, and that is there are 4 inmates currently on death row that aren't covered by this new law. What we would do in that case is take, I don't have all the facts, I don't have the files on these cases yet, but we would take a very serious look at each one of these on an individual basis. We did that during the Ehrlich administration. It was one of the toughest, most important decisions you ever had to make. But I've talked with prosecutors across the state who say that this has really put them in a bind where they can't threaten people with the possibility of the death penalty, so the people won't plead down to life imprisonment. Most of the prosecutors across the state are against it, but it is now the law. I'm not sure we're going to be able to revisit it. I don't know that we're going to change the legislature so dramatically that this law is going to change. And as governor, I'll implement the laws on the books. And I think it's unfortunate that it happened, but we'll just have to make the best of it.
Mr. George.
Thank you so much, Deborah. I can answer this very briefly, so I'm going to go back to the last question for about 10 seconds. The Baltimore Sun published my article about independent audits for all agencies and departments. Before that, no candidates had a plan where they were going to find waste. So I put it out there, it's documented, it's nice to hear other people are on board. As far as the death penalty goes, it's a great concern for all of us, but where it hits home is the prosecutors. They would not allow much testimony from the prosecutors in the hearing. I thought that was wrong. Between the hearing and by the time the bill got to the floor, we heard from them. It was a tool for prosecutors to hold the death penalty out there. And then whoever that prisoner, temporary person who was in custody, was in temporary custody, and he was going to get a trial, he would come clean and he'd tell them much more that saved a lot of lives. It saved lives. There was a gentleman in Baltimore. He raped 6 women. They believed he was responsible for 2 murders. They found out who he was from information somebody else gave to them. Prosecutors need that tool. For that reason, I think we ought to put it back. Thank you.
Mr. Craig.
I believe it would have been better to get rid of the death tax instead of the death penalty, the estate tax. But on the death penalty issue, the reality is that we all agree there are certain crimes that took place. The shooting that took place in Connecticut, if the person had not committed suicide, would we have wanted the prosecutor to say, we are going to look for the death penalty for you? The shootings that you mentioned earlier in some of the cases. This has taken away the rights of the prosecutor, the state's attorney, to be able to really push this issue with the person that's been arrested and to get them to either admit that they committed the crime or to at least try to get a lesser of a penalty. So it was a mistake to do it. It is going to be very difficult in the General Assembly to get that changed immediately, though we do have probably 50 new delegates and senators will be there next year, and maybe they will have a different opinion. But it will probably take them a while to make that change in their decision.
We have many questions, but we are moving ahead now to our closing statements. So time now for the closing statements. We're going to go in alphabetical order, starting with you, Mr. Craig, first.
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming out. And I've spoken so many times to your associations in various places. I'm David Craig. I'm a lifelong Marylander, 10th generation, married my high school sweetheart. Melinda and I have been married for 43 years. 3 children, son's a Navy veteran, and daughters are teachers, have taught. I want to make this a good place for them because I want to make it a good place for the 12th generation of our family, those 8 grandchildren, to live. What are we going to do? We're going to make sure we lower your taxes, give you tax relief, that we help the economy come back so that people have jobs, and that we protect your freedoms, and we eliminate things like the Unaffordable Care Act, the Unaccessible Care Act, the Second Amendment rights, and protect them, and also Common Core. And I'm also very proud that about a month ago, early in the month, I was endorsed by Congresswoman Helen Bentley and Ellen Sauerbrey, a delegate. And I'm also the only candidate on either side who voted for the Ravens to come to Baltimore.
And Mr. George.
I guess he's got us there, right? I'm Ron George. I'm a small business owner. I'm like you. I worked hard to get there. Nothing was handed to me. I didn't start off with a lot of money. I had to pay my way through college. I understand the need to bring trade schools back, as well as to have if people want a 4-year college degree, that's fine too. But I understand the problems of the state. I've been on the front line as a business owner. I've been on the front line in the legislature. I serve on the Education Subcommittee, Transportation Subcommittee, Election Law Subcommittee. I've led and I built bipartisan coalitions. I've been successful in doing it. That's how I got 2 tax cuts through. I served as the ranking Republican on the Campaign Finance Reform Commission. Unfortunately, those laws don't take effect till next year, but you'll be surprised how much, as a Republican, I got it to be a level playing field after this. We'll get to the redistricting, too, later on. I had the lead bill for that to sponsor it. Listen, you can say things are good or did well in Harford County. They did well also in Anne Arundel County. It was called BRAC. The base realignment came in and brought in billions of dollars. BRAC is not an economic plan for Maryland. I have an economic plan. You can go to voterongeorge.com, and you can see it there. It was called the most comprehensive, and I was called a leader in it. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Hogan.
Well, thanks again for the League of Women Voters for hosting us tonight. Thank you, Deborah, very much for being our MC. Appreciate MPT and Channel 11, WBAL, for giving us this opportunity. Folks, this is a critical election. Our state is really at a turning point. I don't believe that we can continue heading in the same direction. I think our state is way off track, heading in the wrong direction, and that we've got to change course. I'm running for governor because basically I have 3 priorities. I'm focused on jobs, middle-class families, and restoring our economy. And our plan is to first cut wasteful spending and then roll back as many of these 40 tax increases as we possibly can. We've got a great opportunity in this election to actually win this race. We just had a poll number come out that said for the first time since 2002, a Republican has a chance to win in the state of Maryland. We've cut the lead for the leading Democrat down to single digits. With your help, we can send a strong, clear message to those politicians in Annapolis, and we can change Maryland for the better. Thank you.
And finally, Mr. Lawler.
I'm going to close with what separates me from my candidates or from my peers on both sides of the aisle. And I want to thank you all so much for coming. I thank you for putting up with this. You heard a lot of economic talk that's traditional, what comes from us conservatives. We tend to lean on that and talk about that because we're very concerned about it. I want to warn you, though, don't get caught up in the partisan politics thing. As a Marine officer, I know firsthand, not just with my business experience, but who I'm truly fighting for and who my enemy is. My enemy's not a Democrat. My enemy's not a Republican. My enemy is any policy or law that would stand against and take more freedoms from you or I as Maryland citizens. I want to connect. I want to bring people together. I am so tired of the divisiveness. As one lady said to me at a Kensington parade in Montgomery County, you know, Dr. Martin King had a dream, but you're not it. Not knowing anything about me. But she just deduced based upon the color of my skin and my party affiliation, I wasn't part of King's dream. Yes, we have a robust economic policy for our state, but I want to bring people together. A vote for Charles Lawler is a vote to bring Maryland together. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you for watching tonight. Remember, the election is June 24th. Visit MPT.org to see the candidates interviewed on MPT State Circle. Visit the League of Women Voters of Maryland site at vote411.org and go to WBALTV.com for voter and candidate information. Thank you.
On Masterpiece Mystery.
Strangulation, almost textbook. Delirium, madness.
Looks like you've got an admirer.
Highly toxic.
What's he after?
It's a game. Solve the puzzle, save the child. We've less than 12 hours to find her.
Endeavour on Masterpiece Mystery.
Sunday night at 9 on MPT.